All right, hey everybody. This is Joshua Kress, CDFA again. So we are one member short of a quorum. We have one board member that has confirmed they will not be present, and we have one that we have not been able to get a hold of. So it does not look like we will be able to achieve a quorum. So I do want to talk with the board and the chair real quick to see what they would like to do to move forward. So Richard, can you hear me okay? And are you able to unmute?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. So we have a couple of options here real quick. So without, this is one of the issues that we run into modern times and trying to do things this way. So we can still move forward with the meeting and have a discussion. However, I would want to note that the board cannot make any motions without a quorum present. So we can provide information, we can have some discussion, but if there is going to be a motion, it would need to be brought forth in front of a full quorum to be able to move forward. So before we move forward with anything, I do want to check to see, I know we have a presentation, agenda item number 4 that you all can see there. That's a presentation from Jack and Rob regarding a letter that they were hoping to get a vote for during this meeting. So I do want to hear from Jack and Rob. Hopefully you all can unmute and let us know your thoughts on having the conversation about these. Again, we can provide information, but the board cannot make any motions without a quorum present, and it does not look like we are going to be able to achieve that. So Jack, Rob, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, this is Jack
Yeah,
here.
I'm here.
Great. So would you like to present this letter to the public, even though the board cannot make a motion on it?
Personally, I would be happy to. I think that it would, if nothing else, it's good exercise for us.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that as well. I think we analyzed that bill, and SB 292 is fairly friendly, I think, to the hemp industry. We definitely had some concerns. We made note of it. I'd like, any public comment that we could get on it as well. So, we spent the time putting it together. I'd like to submit it.
Sounds good. Well, we'll go ahead and move forward then. I can provide some direction on what the board can and cannot do with regards to that agenda item, but we can go ahead and move forward again. If we move forward with the meeting today, the board cannot make any motions because we do not have a quorum present, and we would want to, any agenda items that had been discussed for possible motion, we want to revisit them at the next meeting for discussion and motion should it be appropriate. So we'll need to keep that in mind moving forward.
Josh, let me ask, who is it that we're missing?
Right now we are missing Van Butzik and Lucas Wilson.
Huh. And has someone tried to reach out
Yes.
via telephone? And
yes,
neither of them are available.
Correct. Yeah, Van confirmed that he was not available for the meeting recently, and Lucas staff have reached out and have not been able to get a hold of him.
If Lucas does show up during the course of the meeting, would that give us a quorum?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, well, hopefully he can jump on soon. We've been getting these meetings started, 15 minutes or so late. So hopefully he's just running a little behind. I think maybe we should just give him a few minutes, and I'd like to.
Yeah, this is Vanessa Ramirez. I have a question. In case we don't get the quorum, can we still, or can the letter still be sent or not? Because we are just going to see if we want to add anything else or everything is good, but could we still send a letter or not?
So the board would not be able to take any action. Yeah, we would not be able to send a letter from the board because the board would not be able to take action because we do not have a quorum. When we get to that item, I can discuss actions that individuals can take. However, we will want to, I'll make sure that we're trying to be very clear about, individual actions that are taken by board members and making sure that we're complying with Open Meeting Acts. Since this will not be a legal public meeting in accordance with Bagley Keene because we do not have a quorum, so we will need to make sure that we are very careful with the limitations of the actions that board members can take. So we would have a discussion during that item as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Luke's name just popped up on the participants list.
Hey.
Yep, I'm here. I'm sorry I'm late, guys.
All right, no worries. All right, it sounds like we have a quorum then. Is that correct, Shadi?
Yes, that is correct, Josh.
Okay. All right. Well, good timing then. Thank you for joining us, Luke. I will go ahead and turn it over to Richard then to get the meeting started.
Okay, thank you, Josh. The meeting is called to order at 10:15. Welcome board members and audience at home attending via the webinar to the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board meeting.
Meetings of the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board are open to the public and comply with the Bagley Keene Open Meeting Act. This act allows for public comment on all agenda items. Audience members may address the board following each agenda item. All speakers from the audience are limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. Are there any members of the audience that require accommodation in order to participate in this meeting? Please use that raise hand feature on the Zoom application or send a message to Industrial Hemp if you have accommodations to participate in this meeting.
We will begin by conducting roll call for board members. When called upon, please provide a brief introduction for the audience participating on this webinar. Lisa Herbert.
Good morning, Lisa Herbert, Sutter County Agricultural Commissioner, and I have member.
Thank you, Lisa. Jack Norton.
I'm present.
Thank you, Jack. Rob Priscilla.
President, Rob Porcella, Pacific Hemp Consulting, and hemp industry finished products manufacturer and farmer as well.
Thank you, Rob. Vanessa Ramirez.
Vanessa Ramirez, I'm a hemp farmer in Ventura County. Were you able to hear me?
Yes, I heard you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Is David Robinson here?
Good morning, Richard. I am here. Dave Robinson, Kings County Sheriff, representing California State Sheriff Association. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Richard Soria, retired horticulture instructor, current pest control advisor. Lucas Wilson.
Yep, I'm here. I'm a farmer, Butte, and Sutter County.
Thank you, Lucas. Each board member should have received an email with all the handouts for today's meeting. Copy of the agenda and all handouts are available at the IHAB meeting information webpage. And handouts will be brought up via the webinar as they are discussed. The topics of discussion for this meeting are brief update on state legislation for industrial 92 and Assembly Bill 45. Proposed letters from the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board to Secretary Karen Ross pertaining to Senate Bill 292. Are there any requests for corrections or changes to the agenda order? Okay. As a reminder, the program asks that all board members check the current board member list posted on CDFA Industrial Hemp webpage for any needed corrections.
Just
Okay,
very
is
quickly,
that Jeff?
yeah, very quickly. Thank you, Richard. Just a quick note before we start the meeting. I do want to note that the vacancy notice for the 5 vacant positions on this board has been posted. A press release went out on Tuesday of this week on August 31st. Applications are due on September 30th. So if you or anyone from your organization believes that you're qualified for one of the positions and is interested in participating on the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board and helping CDFA to support the hemp industry, please do apply. Again, applications are due on September 30th. The press release is available on CDFA's webpage. And if you have any difficulty in finding that or any questions about the process, please do feel free to reach out to our industrial hemp staff, industrialhemp@cdfa.ca.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. During the board meeting, all board members will not be muted by the program to allow for full participation. To minimize background noise, please make sure to personally mute yourself during the meeting when you are not talking. There are no break approximately every hour as needed or requested. A quick note on public comments. We will have opportunity for public comments throughout the meeting, as well as an opportunity for general comments at the end. For comments during an agenda item or pending board motion, please keep comments pertinent to the item or motion. At the end of the meeting, we will have opportunity for additional comments, both related to the meeting and for items not on the agenda. We request all individuals who would like to comment on an agenda item to use the raise hand feature in Zoom. We also request for each speaker to state their name and affiliation before commenting. Due to the large number of attendees, we will be limiting all commentators to a maximum of 3 minutes per agenda item unless there are follow-up questions from the board. We will be timing all commentators and will try to provide warning prior to the time limit ending. Thank you for consideration as we try to provide everyone with an opportunity to comment during the proceeding. If you have an industrial hemp pro, please contact them by emailing industrialhemp@cdfa.ca.gov or calling 916-654-0435. Okay, Josh.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move on to, excuse me, to agenda item number 3. I am going to ask staff, just please let me know if my audio cuts out at all. Occasionally I do have internet issues in this part of the house, so please let me know. But I do have a very quick update on the legislation from the last meeting. So again, we have 2 bills that we are aware of that pertain to industrial hemp that are currently going through the legislature: Assembly Bill 45 and Senate Bill 292. So we reviewed these 2 bills and some other general legislative info during the last board meeting on August 10th. So for this meeting, I'm just going to provide a quick update on the changes and what's occurred since August 10th, again, based off of what's currently listed on the legislature's website. So for Assembly Bill 45, there have been no recent amendments. There have been no changes to the bill since we last met. The bill passed the Senate Appropriations Committee on August 26th, and it looks like it is currently awaiting a vote on the Senate floor. The last date of voting for both houses is September 10th, in about 8 days here. Just again, as a reminder for Assembly Bill 45, this bill is outside the scope of the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board meeting because it does not amend the Food and Agricultural Code. However, we do feel that it's important for stakeholders to be aware of the bill, as it certainly would impact the industry. For the other bill that we are monitoring that is going through the legislature, that's Senate Bill SB 292. There were some minor amendments to that bill on August 19th. It incorporated the federal definition for disposal by reference and also made a couple of minor corrections. That bill passed the Assembly in a floor vote on August 23rd. It passed the Senate this week on August 30th and was enrolled on September 1st. So next it will go to the governor. And if signed, it would take effect on January 1st of 2022. There will be some more discussion of Senate Bill 292 in the next agenda item, the letter drafted by Jack and Rob. That's all the updates I have for now. I just do want to note that. I do not have any additional updates unless there are any questions or comments from the board at this time. And just a quick note, I know some board members were having trouble unmuting. If you are having trouble unmuting, please use the raise hand feature and staff will be monitoring that. We'll try to get to you as quickly as possible. Richard, I'm not hearing any comments from the board at this time. Oh,
Josh,
sure.
I have one question. You had mentioned that AB 45, there hasn't been any changes. I had heard from a colleague that that there was some progress, that but this, I guess maybe you haven't heard about this, and I'm not sure that it's correct, but that the smokable hemp ban language was going to be removed from AB 45. Has anybody else heard about that?
So Jack, I'll try to bring up the current website while we're talking here. I looked at it last night and did not see any changes since the last board meeting to the text of that bill, but I will bring it up now to see if anything changed this morning.
Josh, this is Rob Porcella here. We had missed each other over the last couple of weeks, but the California plan to USDA, I was wondering about an update on that, as I had a farm contact us as they were unable to gain any kind of federal lending through a farm lending program due to the fact that that wasn't submitted. And I know we were kind of waiting to hear what the status was on that.
Hey Rob, so yeah, let's hold off on that until one of the later agenda items, because that would be off topic for this one, but I can provide a very quick update on that before we're done here. In the meantime, are there any other questions from the board on this topic?
The two topics of 292 and AB 45, is that the
Yes.
two topics of discussion right now?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to comment on the AB 45, and that I think I would like to try, as we did with 292, to submit something on behalf of the board, something that we could quickly agree upon as our opposition to it, at least from my standpoint and my opposition to it, and I believe some of the other board members, as that hemp industry people have not really had their opportunity to sort of comment on this, and I'd like to propose a comment on AB 45 on behalf of the board.
So very quickly, once again, so AB 45 does not make any changes to the California Food and Agricultural Code, and so the board's area of jurisdiction would be advising CDFA with regards to the implementation of the Division 24 of the Food and Agricultural Code, and AB 45 does not touch that division, and so it would be outside of the board's jurisdiction, outside the board's area of possible actions. So while individually, certainly you can express your opinions, we do certainly want the industry to be aware of it's not something that the board can take action on as a group because it is outside of the board's authority. And I will note, I brought up the I've got the website, I'm looking at the website right now with regards to that bill. The most recent amended version of AB 45 that is currently posted online is dated June 28th. And it would need to be posted online prior to any action being taken by the legislature. So nothing has been formally proposed at this time, although certainly things can change over the next week and a half here.
And I do realize that we don't have jurisdiction there, but do we not have a voice that we can come together and make a statement on what our feelings are, so that feedback can be moved forward if it's something that we can come to a quorum on?
The Industrial Hemp Advisory Board cannot take action on AB 45 as it is outside of their jurisdiction.
So we cannot comment on it?
Or individually, yes, members can as interested parties, as well as other organizations that you are associated with certainly can take action, make your voices heard. However, as a board, as this group's charge is to advising CDFA with regards to the laws pertaining to cultivation. And so this bill would be outside of that.
Well, I thought you said at the last meeting that you did clarify that, but I thought you had said that we could at least make a statement in regards to it, even though it wasn't something that we had jurisdiction over.
Yeah, no, that was pertaining to Senate Bill 292. So with regards, the board advises CDFA. CDF, as I mentioned at the last meeting, CDFA does not advise the legislature. The board does not advise the legislature. So in the next agenda item, we will be discussing a letter from the board with regards to Senate Bill 292. There is no mechanism for CDFA to pass that letter along to the legislature, although I'm sure that having the letter posted, discussed, and voted on will likely be known. But there's no formal mechanism for that recommendation to be made to the legislature regarding any legislation, because again, the board advises CDFA, not the legislature. However, with regards to bills that do not pertain to cultivation, do not pertain to the Food and Agricultural Code, they are outside the board's authority. And so the board would not be able to take a lawful action related to those.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh. So, can anybody hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Moving right along.
So, yeah, so Richard, I know if there's no further questions or comments from the board, we did have one comment that we received via email regarding this agenda item, and we can go ahead and either bring that up or see. It came from Josh Snyder. I don't know if he is on the line, and we can call upon him first, and then we can go ahead and open it up generally for overall public comments as well. We do want to make sure we hit the one that provided us a comment directly via email.
Okay.
It looks like Josh Schneider is not present in the meeting.
Sounds good. So that letter came from the California Hemp Coalition. Is there anyone representing the California Hemp Coalition on the line? If you could raise your hand and we could go ahead and call on you if you'd like to speak to this. Otherwise, we can bring the letter is already brought up and members can see the letter currently. Brian Webster, you've got your hand raised. Let's see if we can unmute Brian to address the comment.
Brian, you've been unmuted. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Brian Webster in San Francisco.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, regarding AB 45, I'm Brian Webster, hemp business person, member of the California Hemp Advocacy Network, which is a member of the California Hemp Coalition. We've sent a letter with a one-sentence resolution to all members of the board and to Joshua Kress, requesting the board to pass this one sentence resolution. And we'd like one member of the board to make the resolution, one member of the board to second it, and the whole board to pass it. Well, we understand that the board cannot make a recommendation to the legislature regarding legislation. The board can pass this resolution as worded and make a recommendation to CDFA. That's the mandate in the charter, is the Hemp Advisory Board representing hemp farmers and business people and other hemp parties throughout the state to advise CDFA. So we ask that this one sentence resolution in opposition to AB 45 be passed by the Hemp Advisory Board and then made aware to the CDFA as an organization. So that is our request. And of course, people know about AB 45 know that it's the creation of basically one legislator and a Sacramento lobby group, which is funded by outside CBD companies. And there's been no effective input on AB 45 from any hemp businesses, hemp farmers that I know of, or that any of our coalition members know of. Our coalition is made up of the Farm Guild, the Hemp Farm Guild, statewide organization, the California Hemp Association, statewide organization, and the California Hemp Advocates Network. So that's our request, is that a member of the board make this resolution, somebody second it, and the board pass it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Richard, we also have a public comment from Wayne Richmond, who's also a member of the coalition. So Wayne Richmond, I'm going to be unmuting you.
Okay, it's from the board on this agenda item. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Wayne.
Okay, good morning. Wayne Richmond, President, California Hemp Association. I just wanted to reiterate what Brian just mentioned. We have formed a coalition between multiple groups. We are aligned on this matter. AB 45 is a complete mess. SB 292, as the letter is stated, does have items in it that we do support, and we do support a motion being made and the letter adopted as is this morning with this board. Thank you. Oh, if I could ask one more thing, if you can hear me, can you please explain to people how they can raise their hand in the application?
Sure. So this is Josh, real quick, and we'll turn it over to the board to see if there are any questions, comments, or further discussion regarding Wayne's and Brian's comments here. Regarding raising your hand, it may look different in different methods on how you're utilizing Zoom. On my computer, it shows up under the reactions button. If you hit the reactions button at the bottom, it shows raise hand and shows a hand. But it may look different depending on what device you're using. So are there any comments, discussions, or questions from the board regarding those two comments?
Yeah, this is Rob Porchella. This is really along the lines of kind of what I was requesting, was that we as the board could have some input. And I think what has been written here in this letter effectively encompasses my feelings in regards to this bill. I mean, there's literally one sentence in this that sort of explains this in a nutshell. And I would move to, you know, a motion that we put forth this language on behalf of the board in response to AB 45.
Hello, this
I
is
would
Vanessa
second that,
Ramirez,
Luke
and
Wilson.
I would second, yeah, and third, yes.
Okay, so Lucas has a second. Is there any further discussion? on this matter?
So I guess, just so we're clear, the motion is to adopt that resolution language as it's written?
Yeah, that's correct. The bold, large sentence there, the third sentence effectively in that letter, whereas California hemp farmers have not effectively been consulted or had input on legislative bill AB 45 and so on and so forth to the end of that. That would be the motion.
Gotcha.
And I heard Vanessa's voice as well. If you didn't hear that, Richard.
Yeah, I heard them both, but I thought I heard Lucas first. So who seconded it then? Is it Lucas or Vanessa?
Lucas was first.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion?
Yeah, Richard, Dave Robinson.
Yes. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, appreciate it. Hey, I don't know whether to support or not support. I'm following, what Josh has stated, and then also, it's a very broad letter that seems to try to encompass every hemp farmer in California, which I don't know that that's going to be a true statement, only because I don't know who has reached out on AB 45, and so I won't support it in its current format, and also based on Josh's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have any other further discussion from the board?
I guess I have a question for Josh. Josh, what is your interpretation of us being that we're not allowed to act on things that are outside the scope of the board? What is your interpretation of making a resolution like this? Does it violate our charter, or, don't quite understand whether we can technically do this?
Yeah, if the board makes a motion, we will route it and get feedback on that and let the board know whether or not the motion was accepted and any conditions thereof. The board is not likely to be disbanded due to making a motion that's outside your jurisdiction. It just simply would be null and void if it is determined that it is such. So, again, my instruction, my interpretation is that this motion would be outside the board's jurisdiction, but if the board would like to move forward and take a vote on the motion, we do have a motion on the table. And so if the board votes for that motion, we will route it and get a determination on that. Once we're done with discussion by the board, I do note that Justin Eve has had his hand up for a little while, so if we can go to him first before the other people that have their hands up. But is there any other discussion from the board?
Thank you for that clarification. This is Rob Porcella. I definitely don't want to be submitting something that's going to put our position in jeopardy. I just simply want to have our voice heard, and this is a legitimate concern of mine. So if everyone else can understand that this isn't something that will disband the board or have any dire consequences for us, if it's something that you do agree with, I encourage you to speak up on it and see what kind of feedback we get.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have any other further discussion from the board? Okay, let's open it up for public comments.
Go ahead and go to Justin. It looks like you're already unmuted.
Thanks, Josh. The board, I appreciate everything. This is Justin Eve with the Hemp Farmers Guild, which we're a newly founded agriculture trade association, and we're working with the coalition with, the California Hemp Association, along with the coalition and Brian's Hemp Advocacy Network. But anyways, my question is, or maybe if we could ask about some clarity. From my understanding, the advisory board is supposed to not only advise the department, but it's also supposed to weigh in into regulatory affairs and legislative work. So from at least the research that we've done, the Guild has done, I believe that this is perfectly in line with what you're doing. There should be never any negative repercussions for trying to submit some type of advice. I mean, it is an advisory board. So I believe that, you know, the board should be able to submit advice. I mean, other advisory boards, the agriculture advisory boards, are involved, you know, in weighing in on these situations. So there shouldn't be any repercussion, and unless, you know, you can tell us, Josh, where there's someone specifically that we're not supposed to be, you know, advising outside of the department. I understand that, but from what we've gathered, I do believe that it is 100% the role of the advisory board to not only advise the department and then lean on the department to then weigh in on legislative, but they can also transverse right into legislative and write a recommendation based on the advisory board on behalf of the department, which is kind of, you know, the purpose of the board in the first place, to advise the department and to advise outside of the department and bring people in, because you guys can call anybody you want, and public servant or otherwise, and they can show up or not show up. But I believe public servants would have to be, you know, you summon them and they're supposed to show up. So just maybe some 2 cents from the Hemp Farmers Guild. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more public comments?
We do have another public comment from user 18052. You've been unmuted and you can speak.
Good morning. You know, I've been listening and following the hemp situation, especially in California. And I think I've heard nothing this morning except from hemp lobbyists and hemp coalitions. So my perspective is from a farmer. We are a lemon rancher, Santa Barbara County. We had a hemp grow that was just adjacent to our acreage, was not cleaned up properly. We now have hemp growing in our orchard. So the adverse impact of having that hemp growing right next, actually about 100 feet from our front door, is severe. And this idea that the hemp people are not being listened to, I think, is just obscene. It's just offensive. Every time you see something, there's a hemp coalition or there's a hemp lobbyist out there. I think it would be important to seek out and talk with the farmers and the schools and the homes and the people who are being adversely impacted by the hemp grows out there. We had shots fired in the middle of the night, security issues, the odor. I mean, just go down the list. Hemp is the same plant as cannabis. We all know that. And it comes with the same problems. So personally, I don't think anybody is opposed to hemp growing in California. It's how it's being grown. It's the land use. It's everything surrounding it. And now with us, it's about destroying the hemp that was growing there. Because like I said, I'll send you pictures. We have hemp growing in our orchard and we're out there killing it where we find it. So it's a problem and it's a challenge, and doing it correctly is important. So these rules and regulations around how it's being grown, where it's being grown are important. And I know a lot of it, and I know these bills don't really address the land use. That's something that's really being addressed by counties. But talk with the farmers out there, talk with the people who are actually being impacted by the hemp growths. This idea that hemp doesn't have a voice, I think, is just ridiculous. They have a voice. I've heard nothing this morning from the people being impacted. And I wanted to speak up because of that. And we are one of the people. We're being adversely impacted as a citizen and as a farmer. And so that's my 2 cents today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments?
Yes.
We have a public comment from Wayne Richmond.
Yes, good morning. Wayne Richmond, President, California Hemp Association. Just briefly, if I could just respond to this lemon farmers' concerns. Madam, you're talking about an issue that clearly I have some understanding about, both in your county and south of you in Ventura. And I can tell you it's an issue that you need to take up with your local ag commissioner. While you may be impacted because there are a few wild plants, that's about being good farming neighbors. The regulations are in place. And to your comments about how vocal the hemp industry is, madam, we are being crushed by all the cannabis growers in your county. Santa Barbara County has more cannabis licenses for marijuana than any other county in the entire state. So I would start with the local regulations. While we're happy to hear how things are being impacted on you and other farmers, because it is a rotation crop that many farmers want to use. I can assure you that we are being overrun by the marijuana guys and outside CBD operators like Canopy Growth and Charlotte's Web. Okay, so, you know, with all due respect, we understand your pain as a farmer. We are farmers too. We have a problem with lots of the regulations. AB 45 is a complete mess. While it does, and one clarification here, there has been, we have heard some language changes in process vis-a-vis the smokable hemp ban. However, it appears that it's to be a phased in plan and taxable. We are opposed to this, just straight up, just to let everybody know. And to the comments earlier about Rob and others being heard on this matter, you know, this is a public forum, folks. We have over 50 people on this call, and I can assure you there are some legislators and staffers listening in. Our voices are loud and proud, should be heard, and feel any opportunity to take this. The worst they can do is say you can't turn in the letter. Let us not let that stop our voices from being heard in these forums. Thank you.
Public comments?
This is Brian Webster. I'd like to make a comment. Can people hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so yes, once again, I'd like to encourage the board to vote on and pass this one sentence resolution, which has been submitted or resolved and seconded. So it's up for a vote. I'm a little bit disappointed with Joshua Kress and his comments, which are kind of designed to limit the voice and limit the power of the advisory board to speak out. There is no reason why the advisory board cannot pass this resolution and advise CDFA. It is not the outside of the purview of the advisory board to make a resolution, take a position, speak out, use free speech to communicate their opinion to CDFA, and Josh should be advocating for the advisory board to take action and have a voice and get things done, rather than not take action, not exercise its voice, and not get things done. This is a big problem, AB 45. Farmers are going to go out of business. It was written with no farmer input. I have not heard any farmer advocating for AB 45. I have not met anybody out in the field, out in the industry, you know, who's had any input on the bill or is for the bill. We know how the bill was written and who wrote it, and we're opposed to that kind of legislative, you know, manipulations. And so that's my comment. I encourage the board to speak out, take action on behalf of the California hemp farmers and businesses who will go out of business if AB 45 is passed with amendments or without amendments. It's a bad thing. And our industry is against it. And I encourage the advisory board to make a comment. It's totally appropriate. And that's what the board is for. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have any more public comments?
Hey, Richard, we do have an additional public comment. This is a written public comment from Kareem Kassim, which stated, additionally, AB 45 mirrors regulations in many other states. And that is all the public comments.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a motion and we'll take a vote on the motion. Lisa Herbert, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Jack Norton,
I'll abstain.
abstain. Rod Purcella,
Yes.
Vanessa Ramirez,
Yes.
Dave Robertson,
No.
Richard Soria, I abstain. Lucas Wilson, is Lucas there?
Richard, I don't see Lucas on the list of participants. He may be having some technical difficulties.
Okay,
So this is Josh again. If we can try to get a hold of Luke to see if he can rejoin us. Otherwise, if he's not present, if we can table this vote where it's at until he can rejoin us and provide us with his vote. So that way we can ensure that a quorum is present for it.
okay, Josh.
So just staff, do you see Luke back on at this point?
No, Josh, we do not see Luke.
Okay, then let's go ahead and if there's any, we'll go ahead and table the vote for now until Luke can rejoin us, and then if staff can let us know when he rejoins, we can come back around to that. Otherwise, we can go ahead and see if there's any additional comments pertaining or any further discussion from the board pertaining to this agenda item. Vanessa, you've got your hand up.
Yes, actually, would it be possible to address the comment from the lemon farmer? Is it okay to do it now or should I do it later?
Sure, it's still in the same agenda item, so feel free.
Well, first of all, I'm a hemp farmer in Ventura County, and I just want to let our lemon farmer know that as a farmer, I'm very I'm concerned about your comments. I'm sorry that was your experience. Here, when I used to grow strawberries, I remember my neighbor who was a vegetable grower doing his land prep right next to my strawberries, and I was really concerned about the spider mites. So the first thing that I would recommend is, of course, going to reach out to your neighbor. And the second one, if nothing happens, is going with your local ag commissioner, which is what we have done here in our county. You shouldn't have any issues with volunteer hemp, because here in California, we don't really grow for seeds, hemp seeds outdoors. So that was a problem that I'm sure the hemp farmer had, your neighbor. So I'm really sorry that you're going through this. I would definitely reach out, first of all, to your neighbor, and second, to the ag commissioner. Here in Ventura County, our ag commissioner have been great. We have put some measures, so we are not a nuance to our other farmers. And we want to continue as a hemp farmer. We want to continue and we want to be in business. So I'm sorry that you had such a bad experience. That was all.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah. Hey, Richard, it looks like we've got one hand raised. Is there any further discussion or comments from the board? It looks like we have one more public comment, if not. right, Richard Andrade, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Yes, hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Richard Andrade, President and CEO of the Solari Group of Companies. I had a question in relation to something that Josh Kress said in terms of the AB 45 not amending the California Food and Agriculture Code. I would like to know if there has been an administrative review to that effect by legal staff at CDFA in terms of what the bill has proposed. And secondly, in relation to the lemon farmers comment, I would like to say that, that is very likely from unsound farming practices, because we have farm operations on agricultural land that is actually intertwined with food production, such as lettuce, kale, arugula, and other types of salads. And we don't have this problem. In addition, we do produce seed, not at the moment in California, but we are registered with the California Seed Association, not Seed Association, the group that's in Berkeley that implements the AOSCA rules, and there are definitely farming practices that are allowable under AOSCA guidelines in terms of seed production. And if farmers are just leaving trash and affecting other farms from volunteer or the spread of hemp seeds that are outside their normal operations, that would just be unfair or unsound, farming practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have any more public comments on this agenda item?
We do have a public comment from user 18052. And just a heads up, you do have 30 seconds remaining on your 3 minutes for this agenda item.
Okay, well, I'd like to respond to some of these comments. I didn't speak because I needed help or guidance. If you think for a minute, we didn't try to reach out to the farmer, we did. We also reached out to the county, we did. They're not doing anything. What I'm trying to suggest is we can't be the only one having this issue. And it's not just the growing of the hemp, it's all the other issues that come along with it. So I'm not asking for advice. I'm asking for sensitivity to the farmers.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other public comments?
We have no additional public comments, Richard.
Okay, should we just move on to the next agenda item, Josh?
Yeah, just to confirm with staff, has Luke Wilson shown up in the meeting yet?
No, Josh, we do
Okay.
not see him.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and keep on moving.
Okay. So we're at agenda item number 5, public comments on matters not on the agenda.
No, Richard, we've got the letter. So if we can bring up the letter, and if you want to go ahead and turn it over to Jack and Rob to discuss their letter.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack and Rob.
Rob, we haven't really discussed how we were going to present this letter, but I take it that everybody's had a chance to look over it. Unless you were thinking anything different, maybe we could ask the board if they would like for us to summarize the comments we had in the letter, or if we'd like to move straight into questions and comments.
Yeah, my assumption was that because this letter did go out, I think a couple of days ago to the board, I was hoping everyone on the board had a chance to review it, and we can, go. Basically, what we did was we opened up the bill and we both did a review of it, highlighted some sections that were of concern to us, or maybe where the language was not really clear. And, we just made our comments in relation to those sections, and that's what, if, we go down through this, that's what our bullet points are related to, is just basically the language in those sections and where we wanted some clarification on some of that language, essentially.
That sounds right. So would the board like us to read our comments essentially, or would the board have any comments or questions for what the letter as we have proposed it?
Is this something that we need to review for all the public members as well at this point? I'm not sure
Hey, Rob, this is Josh. So the letter was posted along with the public notice for the meeting. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to review it. It is on the website right next to the meeting notice and agenda. If you wouldn't mind, I think maybe it would be a good idea just to kind of go through section by section, or just at least give the overall impressions of what you're getting across here. And then if there is discussion and potential amendment by the board to the letter prior to making a motion, it would be good to have that discussion. But yeah, maybe if you can just kind of go through high level and then point by point what it is that you're trying to get across here, just to make sure that everybody's clear as far as that's concerned. I think that'd be a good idea. Thanks.
Sure. So essentially, we had there was 3 areas that we decided we wanted to comment on. The first paragraph of the letter is an introduction to our comments, and then we highlight each section that we commented on. So the first section we commented on was section 81001, that whereas SB 292 would change the membership of the board by increasing the number of members who are registered growers of industrial hemp to 6 and removing a member who is a representative of the Hemp Industries Association from the board. And we commented that we endorse the amendment as currently written. However, we do propose that does propose that additional amendments to membership structure be considered. And I think this is somewhat along the lines of what we spoke at the last meeting. Currently, there's a total of 13 seats on the board. 1 seat is reserved for both the county agricultural commissioner and representative of the California State Sheriff's Association, while 2 seats are reserved for members of an established research institution. I have proposes that seats reserved for members of established research institutions be reduced from 2 seats to 1 seat, and that the resulting unaccounted seat be reserved for either a registered grower of industrial hemp, a representative of a business that sells industrial hemp products, or a member with technical knowledge and experience in analytical testing of cannabis. And I think our point there was that maybe perhaps that research institutions might be overrepresented, and also we would like to fill out the seats on the board. There's lots of empty seats here. Our next comment related to really some clarity, where the section 81006 current law states that a registrant that intends to grow industrial hemp and who complies with this section shall not be prosecuted for the cultivation or possession of marijuana as a result of a laboratory test report that indicates a percentage concentration of THC that is greater than 0.3% but does not exceed 1%. In addition, for a violation committed intentionally or with recklessness or gross negligence, the secretary shall immediately report the grower of industrial hemp, established research institute, or hemp breeder to the Attorney General of the United States and the Attorney General of the state as applicable. SB 292 would revise some enforcement procedures to conform to the requirements for a state plan under that federal law by specifying that a grower of industrial hemp, established research institution, or hemp breeder as a result of a negligent violation is not subject to any criminal enforcement action by the state or a local government. We both felt that language was unclear, that as it was presented within the bill, would it relieve farmers from criminal enforcement should a laboratory test indicate a crop that exceeds 1% THC? So we suggest that IHAB recommends that a more granular definition of recklessness or gross negligence be addressed within the bill. As an example, some greater threshold of THC concentration. And we discussed why there's issues with that. Available genetics may be heterogeneous. Testing and sampling to monitor for cannabinoid accumulation during the production season can be cost prohibitive. And hemp farmers, all of us farmers are relatively inexperienced when it comes to farming hemp. A crop that results in a laboratory test that indicates a percent concentration of THC that is greater than 1% should not alone constitute criminal enforcement of hemp farmers. I think that was one of the most important, that may be the most important comment you made.
That was, and let me just briefly comment on it because that came from a personal place with me in management of over 500 acres of hemp that was grown last season. I had that acreage broken up into multiple 40-acre plots, and at one point on my final pre-harvest test, everything came back below 0.3. Except I had, I think, one plot or two plots that were 0.4. One came back at 0.8, and I had to retest on that. And believe me, that week in between the time that test came back and I was able to get the second test done was very stressful. I'm very concerned about what the implications were if that test were going to come back at greater than 1%, because we had tested at 0.8, and a week later. The concern was that we would be in excess of 1%. We were not growing marijuana. We were not growing, anything close to marijuana. It was a hemp crop that was, approved. And when the final test came back, as we retested, we ended up being below 0.3%. And all of my plots ended up being approved for harvest. But that came from a personal place that I was literally in fear of potential criminal prosecution for something that really there was absolutely no intent of farming for THC or therefore doing anything with it. So that was my personal experience and came from a little bit from that place. So
yeah, thank you, Rob. Yeah, I mean, this Rob's example, it's clear that negligence is the wrong word for that. He did not intend to approach that limit, and it was not through actions of his own that happened either. Okay, and then finally we had a comment that didn't specifically wasn't specifically about the language of the bill itself, is more an opportunity for an additional Food and Agricultural Code amendment. So we listed the background. The USDA final rule retains the disposal requirements explained in the interim final rule, but clarifies what disposal means and explains how the process must be conducted. The final rule also includes remediation as an option to remove non-compliant plants. Oregon, for example, has a remediation program for non-compliant plants. And so our comment to this is that we suggest that IHAB recommends that the Food and Agricultural Code be amended to align with the USDA final rule and regulations, specifically pertaining to the options for disposal and allowances for remediation. And this really plays into the fact that a hot crop is not it's not really based on negligence or intent. And besides not being criminally prosecuted, if there is a way to retain value while still following the law and not utilizing that hot crop as a hot crop, not using that THC per se in the way that the law does not want us to, that if there is an allowance for remediation where the farmer could still obtain some value from that crop, as an advisory board, we believe that we should be promoting that and that it should be allowed. Finally, the comment says, given that a county agricultural commissioner and representative of the California State Sheriff's Association reside on IHAB is uniquely positioned to develop and recommend the establishment of disposal and remediation regulations based on USDA guidelines. Because of our charter, we are naturally we naturally are a coalition of interested parties. And so that does put us in a good position to develop and recommend disposal and or remediation regulations. So that's the meat of the letter. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
All right, well, it doesn't sound like it at this point. I do want to note very quickly, it looks like Luke Wilson is back in the meeting. Luke, can you confirm? Are you able to unmute?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, sounds good. Richard, do we want to go back really quickly? Lucas, it cut off before we were able to record your vote on the last motion, or on the motion that was at hand. We want to go back and see if we can record Luke's vote very quickly before continuing the conversation on this item.
I'll say aye.
Okay, Luke voted aye. So Richard, are you able to unmute? He's still there. There you are, Richard.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. There we go. So Richard, Luke voted yes on the last the motion from the last agenda item. So I do want to make sure that we get that into the record. So just to very quickly for you recap, that would be 3 yeses, 2 nos, and 2 abstentions, and so the motion would pass. Any additional questions or concerns on that motion very quickly before we move back to the current agenda item? Okay, it doesn't sound like there's anything further. So we'll go ahead and if we can have a board conversation and discussion on the letter at hand and then go out for public comment on this agenda item. I appreciate that. Thank you. If I could remind the audience, if you could please stay muted when you're not speaking, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Is there any conversation or discussion on the letter or any changes to letter or questions for Jack and Rob on the letter from the board? Okay, Richard, hearing none, do you want to go ahead and go to public comments? Oh. Richard.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, for some reason it goes mute and unmute. Okay, do we have any public comments on this?
Oh. Yeah, we've got
We do have a public.
Wayne had his hand up first. It looks like it's showing up in order on here, so we can keep going in the order that people raise their hands, if that's okay, Richard.
Richard and Josh, this is Lisa
Okay,
Herbert.
Lisa.
I had a question as a member of the board. I was
Sure.
and could not speak. Josh, I would like to know what the department's stand is on SB 292 and if they support it at this time.
I am not aware of any official stance by the department at this time.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board before we move to public comments with Wayne? It doesn't sound like it. Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, thank you. Wayne Richmond, President of California Hemp Association. First off, let me say that we as a group support this comments to Senate Bill 292. Additionally, I would like to say, as part of the group that has conversations at USDA regarding this very subject, that there is no definition for methods of remediation. It's a little bit of common sense at this point, and no doubt this board will have an opportunity, we hope, if we can continue the trajectory of injecting yourselves and our greater interests into the political process by being more proactive, as has been demonstrated in the last couple of meetings. So I want to applaud the board for putting forth these more proactive actions. And again, I would say that we support this 292. There's some language differences, but generally it supports exactly what the board did last meeting, which was to eliminate the HIA jury-rigged held seat to be open to any state association. So that is also mirrored in the bill. And then remediation versus destruction. Destruction versus disposal is clearly defined in this bill. And that is something I know that our organization, both statewide and the national committees that we are involved with, and the feedback to USDA supports that as well. Remediation will be defined over time. There are multiple methodologies depending on exactly what the crop is and at what point you're trying to do remediation. So again, what we should probably also do is help law enforcement and ag commissioners statewide to understand where that's at specifically, and to discourage Wild West attitudes and 58 different interpretations. So I would heartily suggest that as a upcoming agenda item here, maybe even in the next meeting, that we put forth those kinds of concepts and ideas to the legislators, and elicit public comment and help formulate better regulatory frameworks for success in growing hemp, and not make it a gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Who's next, Josh?
Next up, we've got the member of the public identified as 18052. You're on the clock. Thank you.
18052, that's kind of an interesting label. So yeah, I wanted to address this suggestion that the board be increased by hemp representation. Right now, by my count, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's 13 members. 8 of them of the current composition have a hemp interest. And increasing that to 9 when there's 13 members doesn't seem appropriate. I mean, you've got 1 member of the public. There are interested people out there that I think could provide a perspective on hemp growing and the consequence, and the, being a farmer and being the receiver of some of the issues with hemp, I think would help balance the input and what the advisory board is hearing and what they are considering. And I realize that the state is not looking at land use, and that's a big issue right now, is land use, and that's a county thing. But I think just the sensitivity of what is going on out there with the hemp grows. I understand that there's a cannabis and a hemp conflict, but all of that, I think an advisory board bringing that in with people that have real life experience with the grows and the consequence of that would be helpful to an advisory board. So I would say, please consider increasing the number of hemp representatives on this board and make it more balanced, and go in the opposite direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a public comment from Justin Eve. Justin Eve, you've been unmuted.
Can you hear me okay here? Hello? Can you hear me okay?
Justin.
Okay, thank you. Real quick comment to the commenter. This is just me with the Hemp Farmers Guild. Just real quick to help, maybe, I don't know the lady's name. Maybe next time she speaks, if she could tell her name, that would be great, so we could address her by her name, not whatever that ID is. But this is an advisory board to promote this crop. We need more agriculture people and more hemp people. And I think a lot of people are confused hemp people for CBD and cultivation for a very narrow aspect of this, which maybe there's been issues, maybe not. But this is to promote this crop and to roll out this industry. There'll be millions of acres of hemp in California eventually, and food and fiber will probably be a majority of those acres. So asking for us to go the opposite direction and not have more people support this industry doesn't make sense. This is a board to roll out this industry. So regardless of that, in 292, we, for the most part, think there's some great language in there. There is some problems in there that highly restrict our capabilities in the state. UC researchers, those that hold a seed breeding license, there's a line within there that says the mother stock or the seeds or the plants being used to breed must be hemp of the less than 1% and less than 0.3%, which, to help people understand, some of these varieties that are grain varieties from China, for instance, they don't all test as the less than 1%, because in other countries, they're not hyper focused on THC problems like we are here. And so the big thing that we need to realize is we're not limiting our ability to do things in the beginning stages. We need to not allow this language to pass if it's going to limit our ability to breed. Breeders should be allowed to grow any crop that they want in the name of breeding. That's what the intention was. And if we limit our ability to utilize any type of cannabis L sativa for breeding purposes for the hemp industry, it is a mistake. We are a breeding state. Our UCs need to do this. Cornell University and other universities are leading the way. Our UC researchers want to do this, and genetics is everything. And on top of that, they're using 7 inches of water to grow hemp. I don't know that lady's name again, but this is what we want, a low water use, higher profit. That's the goal here. So let's not muddy the waters by getting confused about what we're trying to accomplish. Don't limit the breeding. We have to make sure that we don't go along with that in 292. And this is a board to promote this crop, not limit its ability to grow in the marketplace. Thank you.
Okay, we have another public comment from Richard DeAndre.
Yes.
You've been unmuted.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. In line with some of the recent comments made about the expansion of the board seats to include other members of the hemp industry, we have not seen representation on the board from the food, fiber, and industrial products segments of the hemp industry. We would like the board to consider nominating someone either from a business in the private sector or from the educational sector to be a representative on the board so that the board can advise in that area. As a company, we've been involved in the industrial side of hemp for many years, and using the certified varietals that we use from sources around the globe, not including China, we have never had an issue with testing higher than the 0.3% limits and our crops going hot. Now, with the recent focus in the United States on CBD, we think that the board is unfairly represented in terms of issues pertaining to CBD, whether it's smoking or extractable cannabinoids in the hemp space, but it disenfranchises the voice of the wider industry, which outside of the United States is much larger than the CBD industry and related hemp products inside of the United States. So, you know, if this board is to promote the hemp industry as an industry, we think that there should be some more equitable representation on the board from a larger industry that is not in conflict with the CBD interests, but just wants to have representation from the food, fiber, and industrial products segment. Thank you.
Okay, we have another public comment from user 18052, and you do have a minute and a half remaining in your 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'd like to respond to that comment about the composition of this board. The way that I read the intent is, yes, this board is intended as an advisory to further the interest of the hemp industry, but also to represent the furtherance to serve the public interest. That's why I think it's important to have people out there who understand the impact and what's going on. If it's not going to be an advisory, change it to what you're trying to make it a lobbyist group. But the idea that it would be advisory to the legislature and to others should have representation of those that are affected by the industry also. And I would think you'd want to hear from them. Let people talk to you about the consequence of what's going on with the hemp grows. And maybe it'll help sensitize in a way to understand what you're talking about and the real impact it's having on families and schools and farmers and other public interests that are out there. So, and again, I want to restate this. I'm not against hemp growing at all. I think it can be a very good thing for America and for California. It's how it's being grown, where it's being grown, and having a good sense about those kind of regulations that we're putting out there and the impact you can have to help the counties put those land use restrictions in place. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another public comment from Wayne Richmond. Wayne, I'm going to unmute you, but you do have 20 seconds remaining in your 3 minutes.
Wayne, are you available? Are you unmuted?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So just a quick comment to the lovely lemon farmer in Santa Barbara County. Madam, this is the Hemp Advisory Board. This is not the Citrus Growers Board. I would suggest you take up these issues with your Farming Bureau or the farmers directly there. While we appreciate your experiences and your concerns, this is not the forum for that. 58 counties have their own 58 different regulatory structures and ag commissioners and local regulations. And I would suggest that you start working with them. And we are well aware, most of these farmers are established farmers who are growing hemp, who have deep respect for each other as neighbors and fellow farmers. And your comments seem to be lacking some experience and education outside of your own personal experience. And if you'd like to contact us directly, we'd be happy to help work with you and others in your county. I'm familiar with your county and where some of the hemp grows are and the ag commissioner, and we'd be happy to work with you in the Farm Bureau to facilitate the conversation. But madam, this is not the place for citrus growers. Thank you.
So for the board, I'm not seeing any additional public comments. Is there any additional discussion by the board, or would anyone like to make a motion?
This is Rob Porcello. I would just like to respond to Richard D'Andrade's comment, and I appreciate the comment. I think that he may have a point as far as the representation of this board, and that in the infancy of this industry, we've all we realize that CBD has been the primary goal and the primary push as far as what's available to growers as far as monetizing the crop. But we all realize that the long-term success of this crop does lie in the food and fiber, and that having that sort of input on this board, I think, would be very advantageous for looking further down the road. And having a member like that on the board, I would most certainly support that.
If there is no more comments or discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Jack.
I'd like to make a motion that the board adopts the letter as written to send to the Secretary of the CDFA.
Thank you, Jack.
Rob Porcello, I'll go ahead and second that.
Thank you, Rob. All right, Richard, you've got a motion and a second on the table. Do you want to open up for any further discussion by the board?
I don't hear any further discussion, Josh. So let's move on to public comments. Can you hear me? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have public comments?
There are no hands raised. Staff, have we had any? Oh, Wayne's got his hand up. Did we have any written comments that were sent to staff?
We do not have any written comments, Josh.
Sounds good. Go ahead and go to Wayne then.
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate again that we support this letter and urge its adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
There's no additional comments.
Or public comments? Okay, well then we'll go for a vote. Lisa Herbert?
I abstain.
Jack Norton?
Yes.
Rob Porcello?
Yes.
Vanessa Ramirez? Are you there, Vanessa?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
How
can
would
hear
you
you.
like to vote?
Yes, yes, please.
Yes. Dave Robinson?
Abstain.
Richard Soria, abstain. Lucas Wilson?
Yes.
That's everybody,
Okay,
Richard.
Josh?
Yep, the motion
Yes.
passes. Thank you.
Okay, the motion passes. Let's move on to the next item, item number 6.
Before moving
next
on, is there any last,
Industrial,
Richard, just before moving on, just making sure there are no additional discussions or public comments regarding that agenda item?
Rob
Hey, Josh.
Porcello here really quickly. I would like to follow up on my comment to Richard D'Andrade that the seats are open and available, and I would recommend that you know, you or other interested parties from the food and fiber side, submit for those positions, as we do have spots available on the board, and would welcome, you know, those interests to be a part of that, part of this board. So that's my comment.
Thank you, David.
Staff, if we can go back to the notice and agenda real quick, just as we're moving forward, just to make sure we're on track. Thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, the next item is item number 6. It's our next meeting. And we have it scheduled for October 14th.
Richard, the next
Yes.
item would be item number 5,
Yes.
public comments on matters not on the agenda. So we'll go to public
okay.
comments first, and then open it up for board discussion on next meeting agenda items.
Okay,
And we've got
public
one
comments on matters not on the,
We've got one hand raised. It's
Go
Wayne
ahead.
Richmond.
okay, go ahead, Wayne.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Wayne Richmond, President, California Hemp Association. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about items that are not on the agenda. One, I'd like a quick update on the fee adoption. Are we now up to $2,000? I think that was up in question as of last week. Another comment I'd like to, you know, there's many new people on these calls due to the opportunity through Zoom. And perhaps Joshua Kress can tell us a little bit about his background, besides being the temporary program manager in this case, looking for someone to replace the previous one. And Josh, if you could help us, do you have, besides your obvious bureaucratic skills and parliamentary procedure knowledge, do you have a background in farming and or business in addition to that? Helps us all understand, you know, everybody who's involved in the board, because we can read what the board members' resumes are. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and remind the public. So this is opportunity to make comments to the board. So please make comments to the board for them to consider, especially pertaining to potential future agenda items. I will go ahead and once we're done with public comments, I'll provide a quick update on actions taken from the last meeting and where we stand. But if we can keep on going, and again, please direct comments to the board. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Looks like we have a.
Do we have
public
any more
comment.
public comment?
Yes, we've got a few more hands raised. Go ahead, Shadi, if you want to call
Okay.
people out.
Thank you.
Rachel Fraser, you've been unmuted.
Good morning, everyone. It's been a very interesting conversation this morning. With regard to the current agenda item, I would like to say I am a laboratory director in one of our cannabis testing facilities that is licensed by the state of California. So I would like to suggest that future considerations of the advisory board would be, how are we going to combine the new Department of Cannabis Control with the future of industrial hemp testing? And that's it.
Thank you for the comment.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Go ahead and keep going, Shadi.
Brian Webster, you've been unmuted. Brian Webster, if you would like to make a public comment, you've been unmuted.
Yes, this is Brian Webster. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, so it's Brian Webster. My company is CA Hemp in San Francisco. I'm a member of the California Hemp Advocacy Network, which is a member of the California Hemp Coalition. Items not on the agenda regarding fee adoption. I think we should put this on the agenda to eliminate fees to register for growing hemp in California. As most hemp business and farmers know, Hemp is a federally legal crop. California is a right to grow state. There is no registration fee for growing carrots in California. There is no registration or fee for growing potatoes in California, and there's no registration or fee for growing almonds in California. So this is a unnecessary burden. The whole hemp regulatory thing is coming out of many years of reefer madness in the United States. Hemp is a completely natural, harmless crop that has been grown for 200 years in the United States. And there's no reason why it should be, taxed or regulated, as cannabis or as, some kind of a dangerous plant. And so I think the agenda item for elimination of fees should be adopted so that the board advises that to CDFA and makes our position known. So that's the position of the California Hemp Advisory Network. And I'd like to get that onto the agenda so we start to discuss that. And if you're a small farmer growing, 1 acre, 5 acres of hemp, $900 or $2,000 is a big deal. If you're a minority farmer, small farmer, if you're growing 100 acres of hemp, 1,000 acres of hemp, it's not such a big deal. But there's, people are growing thousands of acres of almond trees, and there's no fee to register to grow almonds or carrots or potatoes in the state of California, which is a right to hemp, right to farm state. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, next public comment would be from Wayne Richmond. Wayne, you do have 2 minutes remaining and you've been unmuted.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I would just like to also support what Brian just said in terms of general terms of the registration fees. I did ask the question that did not get answered regarding the fee increase. And if it did increase up to $2,000, we have a real problem with a lot of diversity and a lot of farmers being cut out of that. But that's, I suppose, could be another agenda item. What I'm wondering is whatever happened to the permanent agenda item called the budget for the CDFA? This meeting is lacking that. I believe that this board asked for that to happen some time ago. So perhaps in the transition or in the interim, that can be reinstated. Also, an update on the state plan. We have not seen that, heard that, except that it's back in revision. I believe the board should be asking to see copies, and the public should know exactly what's going on with that, and we should have input. Regarding the Senate report on enforcement that was due, I believe, starting in 2019, has not been achieved. And I'm wondering when is the CDFA and IHAB in particular staff going to be getting that report prepared? Thank you.
Okay, we have another public comment from Justin Eve. Justin Eve, you've been unmuted if you'd like to make a public comment.
Yes, I had a question, Justin Eve from the Hemp Farmers Guild. I had a question about conflict of interest on the board. If a board member holds or is involved with the medical or recreational marijuana business, is that a conflict of interest? And if they don't currently have a permit or license or are not currently involved with a medical or recreational permit, if they did obtain one in the future, is that a conflict of interest? Granted, this will not be merged into the BCC or the DCC because they are different crops. This is a agriculture commodity or food, not a drug. And I'm just asking if there's some clarity that could be provided about conflict of interest on the board, specifically if that is going to cause any problems in the future, or currently if that would be a conflict of interest being on the board, you know, in that capacity, even though being involved with another aspect of the crop through the medical or recreational industry.
Thank you, Justin. Shadi, are there any additional comments?
Yes, we do have a couple of written comments, but I do see a hand raised from Kevin. So Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and you do have 3 minutes to speak. Kevin, you have to unmute yourself. Kevin, you should have the ability to unmute yourself. Okay, so it looks like Kevin is having some technical difficulties. Kevin, if you like, you could always submit a written public comment in the chat. Moving along, we do have 2 written public comments. The first one is from Kareem Kassim, and that comment is, I request that the board advise the CDFA to update regulations to reflect the USDA guidelines for testing as soon as possible. Current regulations reflect the previous USDA testing guidelines that requires a less scientifically sound homogenization technique. This technique requires the removal of seeds and larger stems prior to analysis, even though the Farm Bill definition of hemp includes those portions of the plant. This imparts unduly burdens on laboratories and adversely impacts hemp farmers by artificially increasing the THC concentration of their crop, since seeds and stems typically contain less cannabinoids. I request that the board recommend that the CDFA update their regulations to allow for hemp sampling to be conducted by USDA approved sampling agents as soon as possible, since the USDA has finally released a training program for this. And we do have a second written public comment from Dylan Burns with Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs. And that comment is, recently other states like Colorado and Hawaii have revamped their industrial hemp programs in order to prioritize public safety. With hemp and CBD products being more widely available and easier to access than their cannabis counterparts, it only makes sense to hold these products to a more rigorous standard in terms of safety testing. Currently, California only requires potency testing and no safety testing like pesticides, heavy metals, and residual solvents. Colorado and Hawaii have realized and fixed this foresight, leaving California behind. There are several testing labs in California that will be providing that service to industrial hemp program from Colorado. The need to implement additional testing is obvious, and I urge the advisory board to recommend additional safety testing. I have brought this comment up in past meetings and it was largely ignored. It seems most appropriate to bring this problem up to the advisory board so that they can advise the parties, rather than telling me to go and do that. It's the advisory board's job to advise and help shape the regulations that will better the industry and prioritize public safety. And we also have another written comment from Lisa, and that comment is, I would like to comment on the testing protocol for this year. Changes are likely to cause hot results and issues with getting harvest in on time. positive is less material, but top cuts are problematic and not representative of the whole plant. And we do have other public speaker or public comments from speakers currently in the meeting. We'll start with Richard DeAndre. Richard, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. My comment was about the California state plan on industrial hemp that is in process of being submitted to the USDA. One, what inputs and or guidance has the Hemp Advisory Board made to the regulators that are responsible for submitting the plan? And two, is it possible that we can have an update on the status of the plan and its estimated submission to the USDA? And three, were there inputs collected from the public and or interested parties to be able to shape the plan that California is going to submit to the USDA? Thank you.
Okay, next public comment is from Justin Eve. Justin Eve, you do have 2 minutes remaining on this agenda item. And you've been unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about USDA testing labs. I think that goes above and beyond even the requirements of the Bureau of Cannabis Control. And it would make the most sense to stick with the ISO certified and the other things that they've already put these labs through to be able to become qualified to do testing. How many USDA labs are even in California? This isn't Colorado. Thank you.
Kevin, you've been unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking the call. I'm currently working on a hemp farm as a renter. My concern is that there is an appropriate license here, and I was wondering where I can check that. I did look at hemp growers registration, and I was looking there to see that everything was registered here, and it would be fine to continue working here. So is there a place where I can check to see if the license is current here on this property?
Hey, Kevin, this is Joshua Kress. So if you can reach out to staff offline, they can try to assist you. The best way to do that is probably just to email them at the industrialhemp@cdfa.ca.gov email address, and
Okay.
they can try to assist you offline.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like we have no additional public comments.
Thank you, Shadi. Richard, if you're ready, we can go ahead and move on to the next meeting and agenda items. Are you ready? Richard, are you present and able to unmute?
Yes, I just unmuted it. I lost it there for a bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. So the next meeting, the next regularly scheduled meeting would be held on October 14th, 2022, based off of the last board meeting where there was a discussion on holding the meeting, I believe the second Thursday of the first month of each quarter. And so October 14th would be the next meeting date. We have a couple of suggested agenda or suggestions from the public. So I do want to quickly provide the board with some updates, and then you all can discuss what you'd like to have on the agenda for the next meeting. One of those was an update on the fees. So at the last board meeting, there was a board motion on amending the, or 2 meetings ago, there's a board motion recently on amending the fee schedule to raise the fees to $2,000 per registrant per county. That recommendation from the board is still under consideration from the department. I do not have any updates at this time on the path forward and if and when that motion will be implemented. When the department does decide to move forward, we will be providing an update to everyone. We'll also start the process of, when we do update fees, start the process of amending regulations through the regular rulemaking process as required. We will be looking to do that soon, but at this time, I do not have an update on where the department is at regarding the board's specific recommendation and what action the department will be taking based on that recommendation. There were a couple of questions regarding the state plan. So just very quickly to give some background information, the state plan is a compilation of California's laws and regulations. It can include proposed laws and regulations, but it really is, it's the laws and regulations that are implemented in California pertaining to industrial hemp. CDFA did submit excuse me, a state plan last fall for consideration by USDA. USDA then updated the regulations, and some of the requirements that had been in federal law were specified in regulation. Currently, we are looking at what changes need to be made to regulations. We do have 2 rulemakings that are currently out regarding changes to regulations that would need to be implemented for the purposes of that state plan. There are also some changes in Senate Bill 292 that incorporate language from federal laws and regulations that would be incorporated into the state plan. The changes to regulations, anything where there has been discretion, certainly we did have a number of discussions with the board pertaining to sampling and testing and things of that nature. But certainly in order to comply with federal law, need to incorporate federal laws and regulations to make sure we are compliant with that. So currently the CDFA is putting together a package containing our existing laws and regulations and determining what additional changes need to be made to ensure federal compliance and resubmit to USDA. I do not have a timeline for that process. However, any proposed changes as part of that plan will also be proposed via regulation and will be available for public comment and subject to the general rulemaking process. Any major changes we prefer and we'll try to incorporate the feedback from the board as we have in the past, and we'll continue to do so. Additionally, any changes that have been made or any regulations that are currently in place regulations are made to be changed, and so there will be plenty of opportunities moving forward for the board and the public to provide comments in different venues, including from the board as part of Industrial Hemp Advisory Board meetings. But again, I do not have a timeline for submission of a revised state plan, but that is something the department is actively working on to try to obtain and ensure federal compliance. I believe that's it. If there are any other questions that the board has when trying to put together agenda items for the next meeting, please let me know. Otherwise, I do want to open up for board discussion on agenda items and whether or not you would like to keep that same meeting date. And additional agenda items that you would like to have considered. It looks like Vanessa has her hand raised. If we can unmute Vanessa.
Thank you very much, Josh. So, and excuse my ignorance. So the reason why there is not timeline for the final plan is because there is still some pending items like the 292, correct?
Correct. So we're still exploring what the process needs to be internally, but yes, we were waiting for language in Senate Bill 292. We also have a couple of ongoing rulemakings that are out for public comment, and one I believe that will be out for public comment soon regarding the changes that were made via emergency. And then we are still reviewing and making sure that we capture everything that's needed from USDA. Throughout this process, CDFA has been in contact with USDA with their hemp program staff to make sure that whatever language California has in law and regulation complies with federal law and regulation, and determine what changes need to be made. And those conversations with USDA are also still ongoing. And so we've been very lucky to have active partners at USDA to help us make sure that we are clear on what the federal requirements are and make sure that we can comply with them.
So what would your recommendation be, if you can recommend, or the USDA can recommend to us in regards, if the farm credit is is waiting for that part to allow to a loan to one of our farmers. And also my last company, we couldn't sell our hemp biomass to Colorado because we didn't have the because the USDA said that they were waiting for our final plan. So in those instances where either the farm credit or other states are waiting for that in order to move, with processes or with purchases, what can we do? Can the USDA give us a pass, or I don't know. I'm just wondering what could we do in order to move forward with business.
Yeah, and Vanessa, unfortunately, I don't have any specific recommendations on how to deal with, certainly how to deal with lenders. Again, we are actively trying to work on and accommodate the need for the state plan. We appreciate that we've had a number of growers that have concerns and have run into issues regarding the compliance issues between California laws and regulations and federal laws and regulations. And so we are working to address those concerns. In the meantime, unfortunately, I do not have any additional resources. That is something we can investigate further offline if you'd like. But at this time, I don't have any specific recommendations for you, unfortunately, at this time.
I would like to take you on if there is something that you can, or the CDFA can research on what would we do, what kind of alternatives we have in order to move forward. How can we do that? Do we need to put it on the agenda, or is that something that just the CDFA can take on doing some research?
That's something that CDFA can do some research and try to figure out who we can put the board and even the public in touch with. And if that's something that you'd like to discuss at the next meeting, yeah, we can do some research and see what we can put together. And I can touch base with you online to get clarification and make sure that we're meeting the needs of your request.
Okay, thank you.
This is Rob Porcella. I just wanted to respond to a couple of the public comments that I heard earlier. One was something that concerned me, mentioning of the California testing protocols being potentially more stringent than USDA to exclude stem seeds, etc. That's concerning. That seems like an obvious ploy, if you will, to try and increase the THC concentration in these hemp plants and make them test hot. That is, most people know good cannabis is in the 15+% range of THC, and this 0.3% is a very low threshold to get by. And like I said earlier, a lot of us in the industry are growing for CBD at this point. And if there is a way we can potentially, and maybe I'll suggest this later, make an agenda item to ensure that we're not unfairly being more stringent than necessary. I have concerns about that. And then secondly, I think I'm not sure who it was, but they mentioned about the pesticides and residual solvent testing. I think that's a very fair thing to bring up, and where applicable, if food items for consumption or are subject to such pesticide and residual solvent testing in agriculture, I would think it be fair and reasonable that hemp be scrutinized in the same manner. My understanding right now is without it, it actually does create some additional concerns for processors, because there is no threshold at this point for pesticide or residual solvent. So it actually can make it possible where any detectable amounts of pesticides or residual solvents are not acceptable because there is no threshold at this point. So I think that was a very well thought out topic to bring to light, and something that maybe we should, you know, address at some point. And if we need to make an agenda item to discuss that or look into that further, I would be all for that.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have any more discussion of agenda items for the next board meeting?
I'd like to suggest an agenda item if we're at that point.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we had, in the letter that we adopted, we had talked about destruction and remediation. And so I'd like to suggest that we have a discussion on on those topics.
Sounds good. Thank you. Do we have any more discussion of agenda items for the next board meeting?
I actually have another one. This is Rob Porcello. This is from a discussion I had with the Fresno County Department of Ag rep that I speak with regularly, and his concerns about the largest time waster, and maybe Lisa Herbert can relate to this, but he had mentioned that one of the biggest time wasters, and I thought he said in excess of 70% of his time is wasted on the variety verification process, and its lack of clarity and the redundancy. It seems like that is a not very well thought out and well categorized way of doing the verification. It seems that there could be a much simpler way of doing that, and then ultimately at the end, you know, his statement was it's all going to be verified in the field, you know, for the pre-harvest testing, because obviously the concern on that is, are we, you know, are THC varieties of cannabis being approved? And the intent is it needs to be either fiber food or CBD varieties that are approved. And obviously there's AOSCA certifications that some of these food and fiber varieties have, but as far as, you know, CBD varieties go and the whole verification process, I think there is a way to streamline it. And we've talked about the budgetary problems that are, you know, of just running rampant in the different county departments as well as CDFA. And if this is one of the items that is creating the bulk of the work for these departments, should we not look at streamlining that? We're talking about raising fees to farmers, which I opposed that vote adamantly. I think $900 is excessive, but I think if we can find a way to streamline that process of cultivar verification, I think we should make that an agenda item. And I think Lisa could be, you know, a good partner to try to help solve that problem if we can streamline it in some way. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Rob, just to offer a little bit of clarification on the variety requirements. So that is in the Food and Ag Code as far as what the limitations on what varieties can be used. Early on with this board, the board did utilize the provision in the Food and Ag Code that actually lets the board set what those variety requirements are. They're currently in regulation sections 4920 and 4921. And 4921 actually outlines the process for amending those. So if that's something you want to touch base offline, those are now likely outdated and you would need to be updated anyway. So if that's something you would like to explore with staff, we certainly can touch base with you online, provide you with the current requirements, and can discuss with you on how to amend them, because that is something that we will likely need to be amending soon anyway. And there is a outside of the rulemaking process, we've established a process for the board to make recommendations and make those updates.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, that sounds great, Rob. Great suggestion.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I don't know if Lisa had any additional comments or questions at this time, but.
No, I don't have any additional comments, but I will participate where needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more discussion of agenda items for the next board meeting? Okay, I'd say the next item, go ahead.
I was to say, are there any, just to confirm, because I didn't hear from anybody, are there any objections? The next currently scheduled board meeting date, just to remind everyone, would be October 14th, just so make sure everybody is aware of that. We do have a hand raised for one more public comment before we go. But is there any additional, or a couple of hands raised now? Are there any additional comments or thoughts from the board regarding agenda items for the next meeting? If not, we can go ahead and, Shadi, if you want to go ahead and go to public comments.
Thank you, Josh. Chris, you've been unmuted, so if you'd like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Chris Boucher. I'm a hemp farmer, first and foremost, for the last 30 years. I'd like to bring up for the agenda for the next meeting, if it can be brought up in terms of the fees. I'm concerned about the Right to Farm Act, California Civil Code 3482.5, and whether this is impeding the fees upon the farmer, making hemp basically a nuisance, and the general overall fees for the farmer, and whether or not there is an investigation into the ability to raise money for the administrative fees for the IHAB and for the CDFA through some of the manufacturers and processors. I just looked through the California hemp public corporations. There's close to $1 billion in market value publicly traded hemp companies in California, whether it's CV Sciences, whether it's Matera, whether it's, there's several companies that you can look at that operate in the state that have market values close to, I think it was 700 million I found, and the other companies that are operating in the state. And to put all the administrative fees on the backs of the hemp farmer, I believe is in violation of the Civil Code, which is a California constitutional amendment, is general provision. And basically that's my statement. I would like that further investigated because I believe there is some type of violation. Whether I'm correct or not, I'd like to find out. And thank you. And I appreciate the time you've given me.
Thank you.
Okay. Next public comment is from Wayne Richmond. Wayne, you've been unmuted.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. First, let me thank the board members who did show up to be at this meeting. It's really important to keep the momentum going that we have with these shortened timeframes in between meetings. I would suggest that we have another one in 3 weeks and not wait till October the 14th. And building on some of the comments that have already been made vis-a-vis registration fees, and building on Van Butzik's review from the last meeting, I mentioned that we have worked up a multi-tiered registration fee program that we'd like to present. That means from the California Hemp Association. And having a meeting sooner rather than later will help that discussion and help us put the brakes on fees rising to $2,000 per registration, regardless of size of plot. It is patently wrong in its format. But we appreciate the work that Lisa and Vanessa and Josh and Matt all did, and Van Butzik did on trying to review the process. Rob's absolutely correct with regard to redundancies, and we need to eliminate those. So again, Additional agenda items, the Senate report that was due 2019 on enforcement needs to be compiled. And I'd like a comment from CDFA as to when in fact they intend to do that, so that we understand what the effects in the field are in each county and what the burdens per the contracts are. And we can't judge that without this enforcement report. And then one last item is that Joshua Kress, you have mentioned before that there are further assessments beyond fees that can be added in here and somehow, and we've talked about that should be downstream processors to lighten the load on the farmers. And if you could take a couple of minutes now, we shouldn't have to wait 3 weeks to get an answer on, is that something possible? What's the range of it? Please define it for us so that we can talk about it and have a discussion. That's all I have for today, and thank you all very much for allowing me the time.
Thank you, Wayne.
And hey, Richard, just very quickly. So Wayne, the report that you're referring to regarding enforcement that's outlined in the Food and Ag Code, that's section 81008, that's a report from the Attorney General's office, not from CDFA or from the board. So I do not have any additional information on the Attorney General's office's report or what the requirements are for that. Unfortunately, I don't have any additional information for you on that. If the board would like to talk about fees, some additional discussion about fees right now, we can have it in preparation for the next meeting. That'd be up to the board. I know we do have 2 other public comments as well, if you want to go to those first and then come back around.
Lisa Brown, you've been unmuted.
Hello. Thank you for taking my comments. I would like the new testing protocol to be on the next agenda. I think by then a lot of farmers will have experience with this and a lot to say about it. I also would like to see a revisitation on the fee structure and potentially looking for a provision for stratification of the fee based on size of farm. I would like for you all to weigh in on federal actions more than you have in the past. I do appreciate the actions of the board today, being very proactive. I think that's a good direction for the board. And I also wanted to say that I had a little bit of a hard time raising my hand for some reason. It seemed a little obscure on my computer screen. I have to go down to a link on the very bottom that said participants and bring that up, and then I could unmute or raise my hand. So I just wanted others in the audience to know that. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, next public comment is from Justin Eve. Justin Eve, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. The Hemp Farmers Guild would like to request that the next meeting have an agenda item to discuss and possibly form a committee around the state plan. We'd also like to ask if Josh, maybe if you could answer this, is there any repercussions for us not getting the state plan submitted? We would like to see the state take a final position on how we're going to operate this. So as the USDA finalizes their plan and protocols, that they have our approach within that decision-making process. And so I'm requesting to have that on the agenda item to deal with the state plan. And then we also want to know, if there's a timeline and what the repercussions are if we don't get our state plan submitted within that timeline that's been laid out by the USDA.
Thank you, Justin. Do we have any more, Shadi?
Yes, Richard, we do have a written public comment from Wayne Richmond, and his comment is other assessments beyond fees from farmers.
Thank you.
And that is all, Richard.
Okay. Well, next we have
Wayne has
adjournment.
his, Richard, Wayne's got his hand back up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, hi, thank you. That didn't sound like the question that I had posed. There wasn't a question mark at the end. I believe you, Josh, mentioned the state plan, or the Senate report, I should say, and the Ag Department and the AG is where that information. So I'll reach out to them. But I don't recall, unless I missed it, the comment on other assessments that are allowed beyond the fees that for registration as it currently exists. Thank you. That's a question to you, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And again, this is an opportunity for comments to the board. So would the board like to discuss the fees and fee proposal or options for fees further? I can provide some additional information. Rob, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely would like to further the discussion on the fees. Was one of the several that voted against the fee increase, and I think there's a better way to go about promoting growth of hemp in California besides increasing the fees to farmers. So yes, I would like to.
Sure. So right now, the board has made a motion to raise, as I mentioned previously, the board's made a motion to raise fees to a level of $2,000 per registrant per county. Currently, the fee is $900 per registrant per county. The board's recommendation would cover approximately 57% of CDFA's expenses, including county contracts. That recommendation is currently under review by the department. However, as was mentioned previously and as has been presented to the board and to the public previously, there are a number of different fee structures that could be created to fund a program. The authorizing statute is fairly general with regards to fees. And so it likely does leave the method of determining that fee structure to be fairly open. This board did discuss and was proposed by some board members, but no vote was taken, with a fee structure that would have had a base application fee as well as an acreage that would have been incorporated an acreage fee type structure, square footage fee structure, acreage for outdoor, square footage for indoor. No motion was made on that. So that is an option and something we can explore. There are a number of different examples of the way that fees are structured for these types of industry funded programs. CDFA has quite a few industry funded programs where growers pay assessments or pay fees, pay acreage fees to CDFA to support programs that support their industries or are required for their industries. A wide range of different farmers and growers pay fees to CDFA. One of those options would be an assessment on sales, either on dollar volume sales, as is done for some of our programs, or an assessment on sales of specific commodity amounts. I can't speak specifically to any of those because I don't oversee any of those programs. I know citrus does have a assessment on, I believe it's per box or per, there's some kind of type of container amount that is assessed. We do have a dollar volume sales assessment on seeds in California. Any of the hemp producers that sell seeds, you also pay an assessment on seeds to support our seed services program and ensure that there is compliance and compliance monitoring for the seed industry in California. So there are a number of different ways that can be done to break out the fee structure to support the needs of the program to support the industry. So if that's something that the board would like to explore further, or if there are any specific proposals, in addition to those that have already been discussed and that we've got again, the one that has already been voted on and approved by the board, please let me know. Wayne, you know that I did email you both before the last meeting and mentioned during the last meeting. If you do have something that CHA would like to be presented to the board, please do reach out to either CDFA or to a board member to present that at a meeting. That is something that certainly can be done. And certainly if there are other ideas out there that can help us to equitably spread out the cost burden of the program, we do appreciate that. So, Rob, I don't know if there's anything additional you would like to discuss here, or if you have any additional questions on that.
Just my comment that I think that what goes hand in hand with this fee structure is obviously the expense of the program, and what I had mentioned earlier, and trying to streamline the variety verification process would make perfect sense to discuss at the same time, because it's part of what's causing the fees of this program to be so high. So if at the same time we're finding more effective ways to pay for it, let's find more effective ways to save money in the program as well.
Sounds good. Thank you. And again, yeah, staff will definitely touch base with you offline on the process for that, to go over it. Is there any additional discussion on the next meeting or the agenda items from the board?
Well, next is item number 7, adjournment. I'd say meeting is adjourned at 12:30.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
You guys next month.